Hi, my name's Matthew Wills. I am the project manager for the Ethics Olympiad in Australasia, and I'm putting this video together primarily for new judges who are interested in or who have been invited to judge at upcoming Ethics Olympiads. Now, before we start, just to make clear, we run Ethics Olympiads for middle school students in November. We run, and that involves 9 through to 14-year-old students. We run senior school ethics Olympiads in May each year, and that involves 15-year-old students through to 18-year-old students. This year, for the first time, we're going to run tertiary ethics Olympiads in October. So the first one's October the 4th this year. But the plan is to run them annually after that. We also run junior school ethics Olympiads in both June and September. The judging, obviously, for each of those different year levels is going to differ, but I guess here we're focusing on judging at a senior, secondary and tertiary level. Judges at middle school ethics Olympiads, we will be using exactly the same structure that I'm going to be going through today. So this video will be helpful for judges at upcoming middle school ethics Olympiads as well. And for that matter, junior school ethics Olympiads. The structure remains by and large the same. It's about giving young people an opportunity to dialogue together using a basic framework that applies across the board, even if the judging obviously is going to differ to some extent between junior and secondary, senior secondary, lower secondary and tertiary students. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen, and that will allow you to see what the judges receive and what they will work with. Okay, having been invited to judge at an Ethics Olympiad, you should receive an email from me outlining the start time. We always have a short judges meeting beforehand, just to outline the latest updates about who's going to be there. Obviously, if there's any housekeeping matters for the judges, it's a great time for us to go through those, so that when you go into the Ethics Olympiad, for example, if you've got a team that has one student who's in COVID isolation at home and is on a separate device, we have provisions for that. The judges meeting is a really important opportunity for you to obviously identify any problems you've had accessing the program, etc. But just so this is the link. So you will get, as well as an email confirming the start time and the Zoom link that will give you access to the event on the day. Every single event has a separate Zoom link. So it's important that you don't just assume, if you have done it before, that you're using the same Zoom link each time. It'll be different. So you click on the Zoom link. But before you do that, in any case, it's important that you click on the other link that you'll get in the email, which will take you to the judges program. This is a brand new piece of software that we've developed, and it does everything the old software did. And prior to that, we were using PowerPoint presentations. So we would give each of the judges a PowerPoint presentation, and they would share that screen with the students in their breakout room and run the heat, by and large, using exactly the same format. But this new software does everything for us. It collates scores, and it's a far more user-friendly system for the judge. From the judge's point of view, the feedback we've got from judges is that it works really well, and likewise from my point of view as a host, the whole event runs much more seamlessly. And that, by the way, is thanks to Karen Singh, who has developed this software. He was one of our judges early on, and then went on to say, look, I can develop something that could be helpful. But so we paid him the license to do this, and we've so by and large this new software is his what he developed and what we now use for Ethics Olympiads going forward. So enter your email address, whatever that might be, at the okay, so I'm going to enter as another person. So admin, this is the email address for the Ethics Olympiad. You can contact me on this email address if you have any questions along the way. So every event has a password protected code, so you'll need to include that. It'll be in the email that you received regarding this event. So in this case, it's Ethics 101. Okay, and you click login, and that will then take you to the event. So this is the front page of an event I've created. I'm using imaginary teams, the penguins, and so it's actually under the broad title of the Antarctic Ethics Olympiad. And in the Antarctic Ethics Olympiad, we've got the Ethics Olympiad Cup. So this is an event that we've set up for this promotion, this video, to help you as a judge know how it works, what to do. So this is the page you'll need to have open on your screen in a lead up to the event, because this is the page that you will share with within the breakout room. So every judge will be allocated a variety of breakout rooms during the course of the event. There'll be usually 3 heats over the course of the event, sometimes 4, depending on which event. So middle school Ethics Olympiads and senior school Ethics Olympiads have 4 heats. The junior school Ethics Olympiads and the tertiary Ethics Olympiads have 3 heats. This is largely because of the timing of the day, because in the junior and tertiary Ethics Olympiads, we're dealing with multiple time zones, whereas with the others, we deal with specific time zones, and we run them from 9 a.m. through to 4 p.m. or 3 p.m., which fits within the school day and makes it much more attractive and user-friendly for schools. Anyway, so at the very beginning of the event, I, as the host or one of the other hosts, we have lots of hosts now, that it's great, sort of taking up the opportunity to host their own Ethics Olympiads. Okay, so after we've had the 10-minute judges meeting, then I will, as the host, will normally allow students into the main foyer area. This is in Zoom, obviously. And on that screen, there'll be a very brief video followed by this slide that just welcomes everybody along on the day, and just explains that I'll be doing some housekeeping with people, and then goes through the program. I'm just sort of jumping over some other slides that are perhaps a bit irrelevant to do with, the mechanics of making sure they've got their screen names correct, making sure everyone's there. So we go through then the program for the day. These times, just please don't take these as accurate necessarily, because much depends on daylight savings times, which apply in some states and not others, some Australian states and not others. So there's a constant juggling going on here in terms of time, start times and finish times. But it's from the point of view of the judges arriving. Once you're there and the students have arrived, the program runs basically as is on the right-hand side of this screen. After a 10-minute or 15-minute preparation, depending on how long-winded I am, they'll go straight into the first heat. As I said before, there may be an extra heat, which would be a practice heat at the start where the scores don't count, but judges and athletes and coaches have the chance to get used to the structure. But that only happens in the longer program from 9 a.m. through to 3 p.m. in the local time. With this program that I'm outlining here for the junior school and tertiary Ethics Olympiads, the start time depends on where you are located. And so these, and where they are located, and these are the start, well, these are the locations from where the universities, in the case of the tertiary Ethics Olympiads, are located, and likewise for the junior schools where they're located as well. So from there, we just go through a couple of other housekeeping matters. No notes are allowed. Judges, please, if you see somebody reading something out, you obviously are going to either point out to them that it's not appropriate during the course of it, or you can leave it till the end. You can make your mark reflect the fact that they're using notes. But the protocol in an Ethics Olympiad, same as the ethics bowls in the US, they aren't meant to be using notes. This is about thinking aloud, thinking together, and coming up with the best possible answer for a difficult ethical question. And you as a judge are rewarding students who are basically engaging with each other, with the other team, putting forward, presenting an argument, responding to each other's arguments, building together the best possible response. The other things there that probably aren't worth going through at this stage, so I'll go back to the judge's presentation. So just to say, maybe at the end of my housekeeping, we'll be heading, you'll then point out that we're going to the breakout rooms. This is a slide from a senior school ethics Olympiad back in May. So each judge has a different breakout room. So you'll head off to the breakout room that you've been allocated for the first heat. And basically as the host, will open the breakout rooms, and you'll just need to select your breakout room. So the rooms are on the left, judges on the right, the teams that they're judging are in the center. Okay, so I'll just share my screen again, and this is the process that you'll need to use too. You'll need to share your screen. Just to note, and this is worth mentioning for anybody who's judging in the middle school Ethics Olympiads, it's important that you share the sound if you're doing a middle school Ethics Olympiad. Why? Because we have video cases, and if you play the video in this program, the students, other people watching on, won't be able to hear the video. So just a reminder, share your sound. But this is the tertiary and senior secondary Ethics Olympiads. It won't be necessary to share your sound, and in any case, all the Ethics Olympiads have the same page for judges, divided as such for each heat. Remember, there's a fourth heat if you're in the senior secondary or middle school Ethics Olympiads. The score sheet, I'll go through that in just a minute, but perhaps just to explain how it normally works in a heat, and this is up to individual judges. A lot of them develop their own little exercise to help students get to know each other. But usually at the start of the heat, you would introduce yourself, obviously, as the judge, and you'd get them to introduce themselves. And it's usually a really important part of the whole process. You've got students that, for the tertiary Ethics Olympiad, will be from universities all around Australia, and hopefully some from New Zealand as well. But you've got students from throughout different regions of Australasia. So just give them a chance to introduce themselves. Sometimes judges like to write down the names of the students on a piece of paper as they go through. In any case, well, they will have on their screen name the name of the team. So you'll get the name of the team. That's the most important things, obviously, for the scoring. But you might like to jot down their name so you can refer to them by name if necessary, although your questions in the judges' Q&A should be directed at the team, not at individual students. So something to get to know each other is important, and talking not just about their name, but maybe getting them to introduce something interesting about themselves, something that they like to do. You might start with something you like to do as a judge. Some in the tertiary ethics Olympiad, you might like to talk about your area of expertise in philosophy. Likewise, get them to talk about what their majors are and what they enjoy in the subject is a way of introducing each other at the very start. You can take 5 minutes off the top of this. There's enough time in an hour and a quarter. That's how long each heat takes for you to be able to do some getting to know you exercise at the very beginning. So it's after that you would share this screen. Okay, so I've shared it up front, but obviously if you have it shared, then you've only got very small images of each student or each team, and it's probably ideal to have the larger image while you're doing the intros, and then to just share this screen with them, because this is what you're going to be using during the course of the heat. Okay, so you click on the heat 1, and as with the case with the Ethics Olympiad, you have a coin toss. Most sporting events start with a coin toss. My suggestion is you invite a team to choose choose heads or tails, and then when you flip it, this is a randomly devised program that will indicate heads or tails. We toyed with Australian coins, but obviously New Zealand schools have their own coins, and Hong Kong have their own coins, and let's face it, coins are not very common in any case anymore. But coin toss is automated. If they're correct, they get to choose whether they want to be team A or team B. So team A will always start. You might explain that to them at the very beginning. They will know it usually, but team A usually starts. So would you like to be team A? If they got the heads or tails correct, would you like to be team A or team B? If they got it incorrect, give it to the other team and say, would you like to be team A or team B? Okay, so once you've established who's team A and who's team B, then you'd basically from there start the heat. Now, before I go there, I am going to share one other screen with you, which I'm hoping I can open. Okay, I've gone back to the original page that we had opened before we clicked on heat 1, just to show you this score sheet. It's important that you know this perhaps up front, that each heat, obviously, it's important that you enter your scores, but it is the case at the moment that you can't enter a score for heat 2 unless you've done heat 1. So, okay, so here's the score sheet. At this point, it's important that you enter your 2 teams. Now, I've called these the polar bears and as you can see, the penguins, the whales. I've differentiated them with a color. The reason for that is that in some cases, some teams, some colleges, some schools, some universities have 2 teams and not 1. So you may have a polar bear red team and a polar bear white team. So it's really important you differentiate those. But usually they won't be competing. They won't be facing each other. They'll be, facing another team from another university or another school. So it's up to you when you do that. You enter your teams on the score sheet. I'm just following the protocol that is being used in the past when all of this was written down. But you could, at the end of the heat, do your scoring. Most people will find it easiest to do this at the along the way, and part of that is because we've designed this score sheet in a way that should be very easy for you to use. If you hover over any of these categories, it breaks it down and gives you a mark between, well, the mark range for each of the sections, so that you effectively you can get a guide before you enter your mark. And so, but the important thing, I think, just to mention, I guess at this stage, is just make sure you've got the teams correct on the score sheet. Your focus, your attention will be on the other slide that I was showing you before, which is this one here. You'll be running this through with them. I suggest you have this score page open on a separate device. You can actually do this on a mobile phone. You could do the scoring on the mobile phone while you did the running of the event on a PC or on a laptop or on an iPad. You can do it really anywhere, but it is important that you are present with the students during the course of the heat. You're the go-to person for running the heat along the way. So just to go back perhaps to the original page, ignore the admin section here that applies to me, to hosts. You won't get that on your screen. You'll just get these three options. So after you flip the coin, you've worked out which is team A and which is team B. You've entered the names of the teams in the score sheet. You present them with a case, and I've put two cases in here from the Senior Ethics Olympiad. That they incidentally are also included in the case set for the Tertiary Ethics Olympiad as well, because they were so good. So your case in the first heat, first part of the first heat, is killer art. You present it that way to the students. I'll give you the question in a minute. Let's just remind ourselves about this case. It is commonplace that you would get the students, or one of the students, to read through the case to everybody in the breakout room. And then you start the round. Top right-hand side, I just clicked on that button, said start the round. This is your question, Team A. Question will come up automatically on the screen to share with the participants. Should artists ever create unethical or even illegal artwork? Okay, so Team A now has 2 minutes to prepare their response. They can talk amongst themselves during that. You start the clock, and this automated clock will run down. We haven't had many problems with this. It seems to run reasonably smoothly. But if for some reason it does freeze, then you might want to have a backup clock. But I would assume up front, unless you have a problem on the day for the first heat, I'll just sort of assume that this will work for you. They've got 2 minutes. They turn their mic off. The other team also can have a discussion about how they're going to respond to this case, this question, and then we go through to the next section. If they say they don't need it all the time, feel free to jump ahead. But normally they would take all of the 2 minutes to decide how they're going to approach that question, who's going to speak, who's going to say what. So the next section is the presentation section. Should artists ever create unethical or even illegal artworks? The team A has 5 minutes and their time starts now. And then you just sit back. And while they're doing their presentation as the judge, you might like to then enter your score sheet details about who's team A and who's team B. That'd probably be a bit better to do that then. But the main thing is you're listening to their arguments and giving them a chance to put forward a position in response to the question. At the end of that 5 minutes, Team B has 1 minute to conference, and you go through the same process. Your time starts now. The other team can talk amongst themselves in this format, although in face-to-face format, it's usually the case that we encourage them not to talk. But in this format, it's fine for Team B and Team A to both be discussing during the team conference periods. And then at the end of that, that is Team B has 3 minutes to respond to critique the arguments that they heard from team A. Now, unlike a debate, they are allowed to agree with the position that they've heard. Okay, perfectly reasonable. The thing you're looking for as a judge is, have they heard the arguments that have been presented? Are they responding to those arguments? And are they giving a critique of those arguments? They have the opportunity to add to the position using other examples, using other ethical theories. At a tertiary level, we would expect, I guess, that they would draw on certain well-established frameworks for dealing with ethical issues, but perhaps less so in the younger year levels. End of the 3-minute critique, then team A has another chance to discuss their response to team B's critique. And so you just run it the clock. Your team A, you have 1 minute to conference, after which they have 3 minutes to respond. Now, it's in those times, those conference times, that I am suggesting that you might want to fill in your score sheet while it's fresh in your mind, because the score sheet is quite sequential. Once you get used to it once, you'll be familiar with the fact that it does follow on for each section. And so, yeah, do it while it's fresh in your mind. And then after the minute conference, team A has a chance to 3 minutes to respond to team B's critique. Again, they should be dealing with the issues and arguments that have been presented by the other team. And then at the end of that 3-minute response to the arguments that they've heard, there is a 7-minute Q&A from the judges. Now, this is really an opportunity for you to stretch team A, particularly at a tertiary level. I would expect that you might ask them questions that might challenge their position if the other team hasn't already, and they probably will, to be honest. But you might like to highlight things that the other team has identified, or things that they haven't identified that could and should be explored in response to the question that they've been asked. This section is largely up to the individual judges to decide how they're going to deal with it. Please make sure you use the whole 7 minutes, and make sure that the students are aware of the fact that the questions are directed to the team, not to any individual, and also that they, if they wish, could take 30 seconds to have a quick chat amongst themselves before they respond to the question that you've given them. In other words, they don't have to respond immediately, but they have the option to consult with each other. Another thing, so at the end of that 7 minutes, you stay in the same breakout room, and you deal with another case. And this time, team B becomes team A, and team A becomes team B. Go through the same process. You read out, okay, our next case is case 2, antinatalism. And at the end of reading out the case, you're announcing the question that we're going to be dealing with, given that in all circumstances, it should be, becoming a parent means condemning one's child to physical and mental pain from time to time. Is there anything effective that one can say to justify choosing to become a parent? Okay. That would be team B's question, and they would have exactly the same process that they would go through with the other team critiquing their response, and them having a chance to respond to that critique, and you as a judge then having a chance to ask them questions about that. Going back to the score sheet. So having worked out, which team you're dealing with, and by this time, certainly by the end of the second half of that, all of this spreadsheet will be full. So just to remind you that Team A, you're going to give them a mark for each of those 3 different areas. And then Team B's commentary will be on this side. And then the response to the commentary on back to the left-hand side. And then judges Q&A would be down here. And then you would go to a new case, new question. And likewise, you give 3 marks out of 5 for these different areas to Team B, because they're presenting a response to the question. Commentary response and judges Q&A mark each out of 15. Notice at the bottom of both of these, there is an option to give them a mark out of 5 for respect. Usually the starting point is 5 out of 5, because you would expect in this context that most of the students, they would be respectful to each other. They're going to listen and respond, engage with each other. But it does give you a chance to, I guess, identify and dock marks where, for example, students are discussing with each other while another team's presenting, obviously not listening, or where one person gets up and walks away, or without apologising at the end or giving some good reason to do so. So you have a mark out of 5 for honourable mentions, sorry, for respect, and again, there's some criteria here for that. The focus is more on the substance of the arguments that are being presented. At the bottom here, there is an option here for you to give an honourable mention to a team if you wish, and this is there simply because in a normal event where you've got 20 teams involved, there are going to be some very capable young people who will not get a medal, gold, silver or bronze. And so here is an opportunity for you to identify a team that you would like to encourage. You'd like them to be to feel like that their contribution to the event gets some recognition. So you're not giving them out to everybody, otherwise they don't become honourable, but you're giving them out to a team that you think deserves some recognition. At the end of the day, obviously, we identify those students, those teams that receive an honourable mention during the course of the event. At the end of each heat, so both teams have now had a chance to present. You've had a chance to hear from them all. The important thing is you're getting your scores down. You can ask them just to sit quietly if you've got 5 minutes, just while you finalise some scores. It's up to you. Normally, what will happen is if this heat goes over an hour and a quarter, then basically the rooms will all be emptied automatically. You will get warnings. I'll be sending, usually the host will send warnings in the lead up to closing the breakout room. Give them some feedback. It's probably important, particularly in the first few heats, that you give feedback to them about what they did well and what they did not do well, maybe how they could improve. We do not usually give them the marks at the end. So the score sheet that is on your screen now would be private, and you would not be required to share the scores. Now in the US, they do share the scores at the end. We do not. Those scores are kept private, and we will, in any case, not be making those scores known to individual teams. Or we tell them the placings at the end of the day and teams that won gold, silver and bronze, and we give a recognition, honourable mentions to teams that deserve honourable mention. So that's probably it for the first. That's a heat. That's how a heat will run, and then you'll come back to the main foyer area where all the athletes and coaches and any spectators, we have had spectators, will be in the main foyer, and depending on what stage of the day is, obviously after the first heat you'll be going to the second heat. Often they're back to back, although not always. Certainly with the tertiary ethics Olympiad and the junior school ethics Olympiads, we would have a 15-20 minute break where everyone could just go and get a drink, stretch their legs, get away from the monitor, and basically have some time out. The teams would obviously have their time out together, usually. So, and then you'd go into the next heat after that. You know, pretty straightforward, exactly the same, different teams though, different cases, different questions. Okay, a couple of things just to finish off. Thank you for doing this. You know, we're constantly encouraged by the response that we get from athletes and coaches at schools, and most of our positive feedback comes in the form of thank yous to judges for their constructive feedback that they're giving students and the way in which they're dealing with the students. So I can't thank you enough for your contribution to making these events work. Importantly, something I didn't mention, but it's really important that once you've finalized your scores on that score sheet, you press the submit button on the bottom. It doesn't happen automatically until you've submitted the scores, and we don't get those scores until you've submitted them. Normally it would be the case that the judge, because of this new software we developed, we can actually see when a judge has not yet given their score sheet or submitted their score sheet. So we will follow up with people at the event itself if we haven't got the scores. It is, as I said before, the case that we would notify both the judges and the athletes within 24 hours of the results, and those results come in the form that I mentioned previously. We have a whole lot of handout resources that are useful, particularly for first-time folk that are doing this. So whenever we run an event, whether it's tertiary, middle, senior, or junior, we organise kits, resource kits for each of the participants. Coaches have their own resource kit, judges have their own resource kit, and athletes obviously have their own resource kit. So please, if you have not received that for whatever reason, and we would normally attach it to emails along the way in the invitation sort of phase. But if for some reason you haven't got it, that's a useful document to have in front of you as well. Again, thank you, and feel free to contact me if you've got any questions. It seems like a lot, I know, for first time folk, but once you've used this program, it is very user friendly, and you'll find it that the whole event is really quite enjoyable, and you'll be able to relax. Having done one, you'll be able to relax and enter into the spirit of the event. So thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you at an Ethics Olympiad as a judge.